Hello, we are live. Welcome to this show. I'm Brigantia Blackbird. This is the Blackbird Grimoire, and we are talking about that Yuletide spirit. Now, before we get going, I don't know if you can hear the sound of the barking dog in the distance. Hopefully, my microphone is picking that up. But the new neighbors in this tiny little bungalow that should never have been turned into 2 units, but someone in their infinite wisdom did many years ago. Well, they have a dog, and the poor dog, whenever they leave, has a bit of separation anxiety and he cries. So hopefully that won't be too much of an issue, and we'll just have to do the best that we can in the circumstances. So moving on, I am going to be keeping an eye on the comment section both on YouTube and on Rumble. On Rumble, I keep track of it on my handy dandy tablet, so I will be looking for you. And I guess let's get started because we've been waiting all year for this, haven't we? It's finally the season of Yule. We are at that bottom end of the year, and now everything is dazzling and it is magical. You have this sense of anticipation, but also this sense of rest and release, and everything has kind of come full circle. And we're starting to get into that mode where we will slowly release this old year, this old calendar year, and then we will begin the new calendar year come January. So, shall we proceed? And now, to begin with, we do have a lot of important dates in December, beginning with December 12th. We will have a new moon in the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius, as most of you will know, but just in case anyone doesn't, is a mutable fire sign. So very flexible, very adaptable, very adventurous. So when the new moon is in this particular sign, just kind of think optimism, looking towards the future, which is, very fitting for this time of year. Then December 13th, I'm sorry to tell you, because this is just in time to encapsulate all of the winter holidays. Mercury will be going into retrograde, and it will remain there until January 1st. So whenever Mercury does this little retrograde, just keep in mind the mantra of rethink, review, redo. Go back to the basics, clean out the closets, look at paperwork, dot your I's, cross your T's. Try not to begin anything major new, no big life-altering decisions, whether you decide you want to get married or you want to get divorced or you want to have children or you don't want to have, whatever it is, if it's big, dramatic, life-altering, put it off until after the first of the year. That'll probably end up with a much better result for you. And also on the subject of trying new things, since we do have a lot of important, very family-oriented holidays, if you tend to have a particularly judgmental Aunt Gertrude who doesn't like any of your cooking innovations over the holidays, this might not be the year to try out a new recipe. Maybe something classic, something you've done before, something the family already likes, just because Mercury retrograde, we usually think of it in terms of messing up our communication or our travel plans, although that is definitely something to watch out for. And, oftentimes our electronics, sometimes it can also seem to affect our creative pursuits. And I do consider cooking and baking, particularly for holidays, to be a creative pursuit. So just, be on your guard and leave yourself a little extra time in case you need to redo anything. Then, of course, from December 20th through the 31st, we have the whole season of Yuletide, and we'll be getting into that further into this live. And then December 26th, we have the full moon in Cancer, which is a cardinal water sign. Oftentimes, this is a full moon that's called the long night's moon, although the names for full moons will vary from place to place and tradition to tradition. And of course, you think the moon, the full moon, that's emotional. You think the sign of Cancer, that's arch hyper emotional. So just be prepared for a lot of this watery, I don't want to say introspective exactly, but this kind of watery tide that's taking you down to the depths and then up to the heights of the waves and going to and fro. I'm very glad that this is taking place after Christmas, because that's usually after the point when most people have their big family gatherings. I don't think we necessarily need any more fuel to go into the possible high drama that a lot of families just tend to deal with as a matter of course. So, the theme for the month of December, I picked renewal because our sun is about to renew. It's going down to its lowest point of strength, and then it will build itself back up. So, the whole idea of renewal has been large in my mind. For the plant, I wanted to give particular attention to. It is the holly plant. I picked this out of all of our various seasonal greens. just because it's red, and red is my favorite color, and I think it is pretty. Then for our animal of this month to give special attention to, I picked the goat because, of course, of the Yule goat. For the stone, I picked ruby again because I've been on this red kick. You know, if you look behind me, oh, what a surprise! Brigantia really does like red. Anyway, moving on. I thought for magical beings, I thought sylphs because I thought just this very airy kind of ice wintry type of fairy might be something good to look into because this is that time of year when, some of those sparkles might not just be the sparkling of the frost or the snowflakes. And then, of course, the deity I want to give extra focus to right now is Balder. The winter solstice is said to be one of the dates that are traditionally associated with his birth. So, who else? And I thought this would also be a good month to focus a little bit more on magical cooking. I mean, that's been coming up a lot just because, from Samhain forward, there's always some kind of family gathering thing, which, if we want to add a little bit of extra dash of something special, a little bit more of magical intention, the cooking is the easiest and the most discreet place to do that. So, that was my rationale for all of that. Now for the big question, how is your Yule decorating going? I am happy to report I am actually finished for the year. I have done what I'm going to do, and I feel pretty happy and pleased with the result. I hope that everyone else has been having an equally easy time of it and that you've really been enjoying the process because I know not everybody really gets any particular sense of satisfaction. But even if you do just a little bit, I think it helps set the stage, the mood, and it just gives people an all around good feeling. So I hope that is going well for you. For my own personal decorations, I chose this Oracle card to kind of inspire my palette. And this is something that I keep coming back to year after year. This is from the Fairy Forest Oracle deck, Oracle of the Wild Green Wood. The author, as you can see, is Lucy Cavendish. The artwork was done by Maxine Gadd. They titled this one The Yule Singer, representing rebirth, feasting, joy. She has a subtitle called Noel. I think that's just what they named the fairy herself, which is, very pretty. And as you can see, she looks as though she's just this crystally, icy being that emerged, from the forest, maybe next to a frozen over lake. That's what I think of when I see all of these various colors. You have those kind of duller natural evergreens. You have the overcast skies that have those little hints of icy blue here and there. You have the brightness of the red. And that's really the feeling that I want to have for my own decor every single year. And I am gradually working my way towards that. Now, I don't have much in the way of very light blues, and I don't have as much, frosty whites ornaments as what I might like, but it's something that I can work towards. And if you find that you just have a particular color scheme that you really do want to revisit every year, whether it's something that's fairly traditional like this, or if it's something that's much more personal to you and just, I think it's pretty, and therefore I want to do it every single year, whatever the case may be, I would encourage you to just, gradually build up your stock of the stuff that you use year by year so that you can have that effect and you can get all of the warm, happy Yuletide vibes. Because I do think this is as much about the vibes as the visual effect in order to get ourselves and our environments into the mood. Now, in the spirit of absolutely shameless plugging, here's a few examples of things that I've done for my own decorations this year. You can see a much better view of my Yule tree. All of these ornaments, I don't think I didn't get any new ornaments this year. The only thing new is the ribbon because I want to gradually conquer the ribbon monster because I've always struggled with that, particularly with live trees. And you can see it a little bit. I think when I do ribbon next year, I'll want to have at least two other companion ribbons to kind of flesh it out a little bit more and help it stand out more. But I found a really pretty blue plaid that had streaks of red and streaks of green. And I saw it. I looked at my husband. I'm like, this is what I've been looking for the past 7 years. And so he, of course, had to surrender and it came home with me. And it has set the tone because, again, as I said, I don't have a lot of the soft, lighter blues. That's what I do in my inspiration photo, but I do have some of those deeper tones, and I've tried to incorporate them. Then you see the floral arrangement. I saved back these really big blue peonies that I used throughout the summer and even last month, really. And I just put it in there to see how I felt about it, and I'm not mad at it. So, I thought, okay, until such time as I have blue poinsettias, this will do. This will absolutely do. And then up top, you see my altar. It's fairly simple, just a few woodsy kind of Yuletide touches to it. I have a little bit of fairy house taking, center stage. It's very difficult when I have such a teeny tiny fairy house to really make it that focal point, but I, try to have everything cave in towards that center. And you can't see it super well, but in the front you have two little pewter fairies. One has pinky red rings, the other has green, and I love it. I do this every single year. There's nothing wrong with repeating something you really love. And then lastly, in the corner, you see my teeny tiny version of a Christmas village. I only had one shelf to devote toward it this year, so I picked my three favorite buildings and a lot of the various little characters, and I've tried to put in as many as the little mini trees as I possibly can, because whenever I'm doing these decorations, I always want to make sure that there's plenty of natural elements, or at least natural looking elements, because that is how I get my vibe for any celebration during the year. It is through these florals and just seeing, what is nature doing, trying to bring that inside or at least represent it somehow. That's what helps give me the proper mood that I'm looking for. Now, Yuletide itself is an amalgamation. And just in case anyone is not particularly familiar with that word, because you don't exactly hear it circulated all the time, an amalgamation is essentially the access, the process, or the result of combining and uniting. And when you look into the history of Yule and the history of Christmas, you do see this very complicated tapestry of traditions coming from multiple localities, originating all over the Western world, drawing from multiple pantheons, multiple religions, and it's all just kind of meshed together. But what does stay consistent throughout all of these celebrations is the importance of family, friends, community, whether or not they share our particular beliefs, coming together, celebrating together, feasting together, singing, dancing, music, all that fun stuff. That is the whole point. Um, that is the shared focus that I think people actually can rally around. And, with people dividing themselves up into increasingly teenier and tinier camps, I think can be quite comforting to leave all of that tribalism behind, at least for a little while during the Yuletide season, and focusing more so on what do I have in common with people, even though they might have different interpretations of what I'm looking at and what I'm experiencing, even though they might view things in a different way. Maybe they're focusing on different deities. That's certainly the case with Christians. They are most definitely focusing on a different deity than we are. But nevertheless, we are still focusing on that hope for the future and enjoying our blessings in the here and now, and just bringing a little bit of sparkle to the winter season. I mean, we have all of January and February and sometimes even March to have, very austere, just nature's sleeping, nature might be dead. We're not quite sure. We haven't seen the sun. It's all overcast. It's gray. It's dark. It might be snow, but it could be ice. And there's just general discomfort and unpleasantness. We have quite a few months ahead of us for that. And if you live further north than I do, I mean, it could be June before you get any kind of meaningful relief. So, because of that, I think it's even more important to make a big deal out of Yuletide and really enjoy your traditions and make things beautiful, so that you have a little bit of coziness to take with you into that more austere point. And then when we do get to January, where everything's a little bit more hard nosed and constricted, and you know it's not as exuberant, that can become as kind of relief after, I don't want to say the excess of the season, but just, the celebration of it, that January can become more of that hibernation and rest. And it'll be something you welcome and ready for, instead of just, and now there's another month where it's cold and I'm bored and all this and that. Let's try to minimize that feeling and minimize the cabin fever and the seasonal depression, for that matter. So Yuletide is just something that's very helpful for people just on a practical mental health level, to fight off some of those feelings. So, what we pagans celebrate is that renewal of the sun's strengths, the birth of deities like Balder and Lu, who are both said to have been born during the winter solstice. It's a time to rest from everyday labors, feasting with loved ones. At least those of us from the more Wiccan or the more British traditions, there's this idea of the triumph of the Oak King over the Holly King. That tiny little baby Oak King is coming back into the world. He will bring the light and he will bring back the spring and the summer in due course. And, And the time of the Holly King, having ascendancy is coming to an end. And then of course we're also celebrating that spark of magic within Winter's Chill, because there is magic during the season. There is beauty. And of course, depending on our temperament, it may not necessarily be the easiest thing in the world for us to see, but if we look for it and we prioritize that, it makes it a lot easier for us to see the good of the season instead of the inconveniences or the detriments. So let's talk traditions. The most obvious tradition that I've touched on very briefly is the tradition of decorating. And for this kind of vision board, you see I've chose very naturalized decorations, things that are very traditional colors. And, that's just what I personally happen to like. It is definitely not a prescription for anyone else to go this route if they don't want to. Some people need the very glamorous, the very shiny, the very sparkly. And all I can say is do that to your absolute heart's content. It does not make you any less of a pagan or any less of an anything if that's just what gives you those good Yuletide vibes. But for other people, it is very individualized. It is very personal. And I think just the main thing is to create that. And one of the troubles is that I see all the time on these influencer channels is that they're very good at creating visuals, but they're not very good at creating feeling or atmosphere. One thing that really struck me, before I got on, I was watching this one lady. I think her channel's called Whispering Pines Homestead or something. And she didn't go overboard with her decorations. It wasn't a tree in every single room. It wasn't, extravagant in any way. But when she was done, I just felt that sense of hominess. I could visualize a family coming into her living room, children going back and forth, the old people visiting, people coming in with drinks and snacks and everything else. I could just envision people living in the space. And that's something that I don't see in a lot of the influencer channels. I can say, well, it's what they did. I mean, I suppose it's elegant, but I'm not sure where the humans come in. And that's something that I hope when you look at this vision board that you do kind of you can see it for yourself. You can imagine, oh, okay, I can see how someone might go with that overall look in their home. And then you bring in the people, and then that's when it really all comes together. It should all be about preparing that space for the people to be and be able to be relaxed and to enjoy themselves and to appreciate the beauty of it without feeling that, oh, a human walked into the room, now everything is ruined. And that's what I really feel when I look at a lot of these more modern styles of designs, that the moment you have anything out of place, the moment you put a human being, it loses its effect. And I think, well, what was all that money spent for? What was this room intended to do? Is it really just to look at? Why are we indulging in these things that aren't meant for us? This is our world. We are the humans. We should be building things in a human way. We should be creating spaces that humans enjoy, not where humans look out of place. So that's just something to think about and keep in mind as you create your own goodness. Now, next tradition is the fine tradition of baking. Yes, we will worry about diets and health more extensively in January. We have plenty of time to do that, to be sure. But for right now, it is such a customary thing to do very special forms of baking. And I drew upon a few things that are part of my own personal traditions. Every year I make a gingerbread house of some kind. I found the picture of that more cabiny mountain gingerbread house on Pinterest, and I thought that is just so gorgeous. I simply must share that with the world. But you can make a gingerbread house, in any particular style. You can have a lot of fun with it. It's a great project to do with kids, especially if you just keep in mind, this isn't about having something that, you know, is Pinterest worthy. This is about the children having fun and, letting them know that they've got E for effort and what good imagination they had. And it would never have occurred to you to have decorated it in quite that way. You say it with enough enthusiasm, it, it'll be fine. But it gets children involved. And even if you don't feel like you have a lot of confidence in your decorating skills, there's a lot to be said for the improvement through trial and error. And there's nothing wrong with being an amateur. Most of us are amateurs at our hobbies. We're never going to take it to the level of art or turning it into a profession or anything else like that. And you know what? We don't have to. It's okay to say, I made this and I enjoyed making it, and it's not perfect, but gosh, it was fun. That's a fine thing to do. And of course, where would we be without the tradition of Christmas cookies? I just like that arrangement of different kinds of cookies because none of those would really be all that difficult to make. And I don't think that we should necessarily think that unless we do something that's hyper complicated, that it doesn't count or isn't part of Yuletide baking or things of that nature. Nonsense. You can bake whatever you want. It can be simple. What makes it special is sometimes just you take a little bit of extra care in the presentation and you have fun with those seasonal colors. But do whatever you feel like doing for sure. Just do something. And cookies are super simple. It's very hard to mess up cookies. Then the other three examples of seasonal baking, which are by no means the only ones out there, they're just the ones that I do, is the tradition of mince pies. And sometimes they're called mincemeat pies. Back in the Middle Ages, I believe they did actually have different forms of meat in them. Now it's just fruits and nuts, and it's really lovely. I tried them out for the first time last year, and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I did think that the store-bought filling was a little bit syrupy, so this year I'm going to be doing it from scratch, which I think will have a much better effect. But it's such fun, and they're just little poppable little bites. You put them in, and it's nice. It's nice to have around. It's nice to bring out for a party and a gathering. Then we have the Yule log cake, which I have yet to be successful in. It always cracks, and it cracks beyond repair. So I'm hoping that maybe this year will be the year that I actually conquer that. But you can see how you can decorate it really pretty, and getting that texture that's kind of like wood bark. You can achieve that with just one piping nozzle. It just has, a lot of little spikes, and you just do straight line squeeze down it, and you do that over and over, and then you have your wood bark texture. It's not as difficult as it looks. You can make something that seems impressive to the untrained eye, but I promise you, it is perfectly achievable for a normal person, and it makes kind of this spectacular centerpiece. And then we have the controversial fruitcake. Now, my experience with fruitcake is quite limited, but I am of Anglo-Saxon descent, so I do feel that I need to master this. I need to make one that tastes really, really good. The first time I tried fruitcake, it was store-bought, and, I saw the concept, but I didn't think it was executed very well. And then last year, Mountain Dew came out with this fruitcake soda, and my husband tried it, just out of curiosity. He thought it was quite the most ghastly thing he'd ever tasted in his life, and I thought it was pretty great. Not something that I wanted to have every single day by any means, but I just thought, every once in a while, kind of a nice little treat. So I'm hoping to convince him to, go to the store, get a few ingredients I need to make a fruit cake, and just see how this goes. There are people, especially in the UK, who are more accustomed to it, who do genuinely seem to enjoy it. And that tells me there must be something there. It must be a question of execution. So, that's a fun little challenge. So, and definitely look to your own cultural background, because it seems like everybody has special types of baking that they can do for these years. And, maybe you could revive a custom within your family. So, don't be afraid. Give something a whirl. If it takes a few years to perfect it, oh well. It's not the end of the world, and it's good to make the effort. Then we have the tradition of feasting. And when it comes to foods for these occasions, absolutely, I do think that family tradition should take precedent. If people are accustomed to having certain particular foods at this time of year, they're looking forward to it, particularly if it's made in a particular way. Don't mess with that. Don't poke the bear. I think it's fine to add to and say, I also made this. But yeah, I wouldn't be the person who would say, "Yeah, let's do something completely different," and everyone's like, but yeah, do not create that kind of drama in your family circles. I guarantee you it will not be worth it. But I thought that I found a few pretty examples of feasting. We know that turkey is pretty traditional for a lot of people. Ham is very traditional, and ham is so easy to prepare. If you have any kind of concerns about preparing a special holiday meal, especially if it's your first year hosting your family or people within your own particular pagan religious group. Ham is so user friendly. The most thing you ever have to worry about is just a glaze and making sure that it's covered so it doesn't overbake or dry out. And then you put it in the oven and you let it do its thing. It is so stress-free. It's not nearly as temperamental as turkey, not by any stretch of the imagination. So if you're needing to venture forth, I would definitely recommend the option of ham. But one thing that I've always been thought about trying, I haven't yet, but this might be the year, is making a roast, a beef roast. My grandma, she was always very good at making roast just in general. She was something that she might make on the weekends. And I just thought that would make a really great main course for Yule and for Christmas because I mean, most people like beef. It plays nicely with others. If you cook it well, it just smells amazing. So let me know, what are your traditions? What are the main courses you usually look for? And then I just found a few other side dishes that I thought looked pretty. And a lot of these things, they take a little bit of extra effort, but less than you think. This is mostly small alterations in how you prepare it and how you present it. It's not nearly as time consuming as what it first appears. So don't be fooled by, a little bit of clever photography. Now, the fine tradition of drinking, especially if you work with any Nordic gods, you are probably in the habit of doing toasts and boasts and oaths on whenever you have important occasions. So, having something that's nice to drink, absolutely important. It can be alcoholic or not. I mean, is any of you personally have issues with alcohol, or you have relatives who would make a big deal and make themselves an absolute ungodly nuisance about it? I think it's okay to kind of sidestep that issue just to, because it's not really in the spirit of the holiday to go out of your way to create problems. So you do have a lot of options that are both, very adult drinks and very non. First up is, of course, the mulled wine, and there's a way to make, mulled sparkling cider if you feel the need to go that route. But mulled wine, it smells great, it tastes great, it's nice and warm. It's especially if you are in an area that is getting particularly cold, having these nice warm drinks can go a long way to lifting your spirits during Yuletide. And then, of course, the cocktails. I cranberry cocktails, but I like cranberries. Yes, I'm weird. But again, these can be things that you like, and how you dress them up is what will make it more seasonally appropriate. And we mustn't forget the long-standing tradition of hot chocolate. And there's so many different ways to make that hot chocolate special. Sometimes I like to have my crock pot just filled with hot chocolate. So just periodically throughout the day, particularly if I'm doing a lot of preparatory cooking or if I'm doing a lot of baking, I like to just have it there. It's nice. And if things get frustrating with the cooking or the baking, a little bit of chocolate goes a long way to adjusting my mental attitude. And of course, hot chocolate, I don't think there's a child in the world that doesn't particularly care for it. So it's a nice little treat for them as well. Okay, need a sip of tea. Speaking of drinks. Okay, so the tradition of entertaining. This is near universal. Whether you are pagan, whether someone is Christian, whether they're a member of the Jewish faith, it just seems like everyone, it's all about the entertaining, all about people getting together. So if you have nice, fun dishes, if you have the good table linens, if you have things that, you only get out for special occasions, get it out. Whatever, whether you're sitting down at the table or whether you're having more of a buffet style, whatever it is you're doing, use your pretty things. Make it as fun as you possibly can. And, maybe you do have a nice silver teapot like what you see here. And maybe it does need a good solid polish before you could even contemplate having anything inside of it. And maybe you have children who could make themselves useful doing that polishing. With all the preparations, I would say do not be afraid to make use of the members of your household, particularly with kids. I think the more they participate in it, whether it's through willingness or through bribery, the more they get invested in it, the more this becomes a meaningful tradition for them. The more it's not just like, oh, mom's making such a fuss. I don't know why dad is like this every single year. The less they're in an attitude about it, and the more they're more like, this is what we freaking do. This is who we are, and it's pretty, and I helped make it. Get them involved. We can't make things meaningful unless we are investing some energy into it. And this is a relatively simple way, and it's also a candy dandy way to to teach your kids about the proper way of setting the dinner table and everything else, and how you might set things out for a special occasion, how and why it's different than what you do every day, and how it's nice to have you know special occasions where you do go the extra mile, you do put forth extra effort, you do things that make it special. You're getting things out because of the specialness of the occasion, and it teaches them some good habits, and also understanding that not every single day can be this high point, the best day ever, all this and that. There is such a thing as common everyday life, and then you have these glittering moments within the year. I think it helps them get into more of a healthy ebb and flow in life. Next tradition, of course, are our rituals, whether we are holding them indoors, which, depending on where you live, the weather might absolutely make that necessary, or if we do have an outdoor space where we can do our rituals, or if we are fortunate like our cousins across the pond and we actually have stone circles where we can gather with other people and greet the solstice dawn, come together for other occasions, just mark the occasion, honor the gods, honor the lands. Even on our ancestors too, because they were all part of this tradition that's weaved itself together. Both our pagan ancestors and our Christian ancestors, they have all played a role in bringing us this heritage. And so honoring all of them at this time of year, I think that's a very appropriate thing to do. So, I mean, absolutely, whatever your ritual consists of, make sure that you do it. Then we have the tradition of gift giving. And people might be railing at me saying, don't make it commercial. I get it. I get it. I'm not saying they have to be big gifts. I'm not saying it should be expensive. I'm not saying it should be, anything that's about showing off. It's just about showing someone you care. Perhaps if you are financially able to, getting them something that they need or something that they want. And, I'm not really mad at the custom of gift giving. I'm mad at, the idea of frivolous gifts or meaningless gifts or doing things just to show off. I think that's a bit vulgar. But I think it's very nice to have just a little special something. And, and sometimes when people do get something that is a little bit more frivolous, that might be just for fun. I'm not mad at that either because, yes, it costs them money to do that. But, you had someone who came up with the idea for the thing that they bought. They had the people who made it. They had the people who shipped it, the store that sold it, and all these other things. How many people were, employed and able to put food on the table and have a roof over their heads because someone else was able to afford something a little bit silly. So I do think there's room for nuance and balance in that. And then, of course, with the custom of gift giving, we have, our various mythological figures who are associated with, not anonymous gift giving, but, the just magical appearance of gifts. We have our modern day Santa and Mrs. Claus, of course, which, I think is just this lovely cultural idea. And of course, we know that their roots go back way, way further. Figures like Odin, like the Holly King, a variety of other masculine figures who contributed to the idea of Santa Claus. And then on the Mrs. Claus side, we have, figures like Frau Holle, who I do think was a forerunner of the idea of Mrs. Claus. Now, Frau Holle, she was associated more with the distribution of gifts, but this idea of there being a feminine counterpart to this winter spirit who is bestowing goodwill, good cheer, and good presents, that has something that has always been in the consciousness. And so I think that the notion of Mrs. Claus did linger in our collective unconscious until she manifested. Oh, Santa Claus has a wife because why wouldn't he? And she makes cookies and hot chocolate, and isn't it wonderful to have this lovely maternal figure? And it is wonderful. And I think these are beautiful ideas to tell kids about, and to say that, when we're giving each other things, when we're presenting each other with these little acts of kindness and goodwill, and when we're doing good things for others, it's an example of these mythological figures. So I think it's lovely. Then we have the fun tradition of markets and festivals. We don't always have these big, lovely, Christmassy towns and festivals like they do in places like Germany. But the idea of having a Christmas market and doing fun things, that is becoming more commonplace. I see a lot of channels on YouTube throughout Europe where, having a Christmas market is absolutely a thing. And people come with their various goods and various fun foods. And it seems like it's a really good, fun time to have by all. And where I live, what we have is actually a Dickens weekend where the local Main Street shopkeepers, they get all dressed up, in mid-19th century garb. And, we have carolers, and, we have, past couple of years, we've had a soup competition, whichever, business had the best soup. People voted and they got a prize, and it was all very fun. And, you got some free soup because you got to be a judge, and it's just fun. And it's fun seeing the way people channel kind of that Victorian Christmas spirit, because the Victorian era did a lot to establish kind of the groundwork for our modern day Christmas celebrations. I do think that they also went a long way to making it not just, this religious occasions for Christians, which I don't begrudge them. It's their religion. They get to have their religious occasions just like we do. But what the Victorians did, I think they also made it a lot more cultural as well. And having that cultural occasion that's important to people, regardless of faith, I think that is part of the glue that keeps hold a civilization together. So I think it's important. I really do. Then, of course, the tradition of music and song. Uh, I actually found I I typed in pagan carolers into Pinterest, and I actually found that picture. Apparently, there is a custom in that's being revived. I think they're in Wales, of seasonal singing and people going around and doing that. And of course, we'll get into wassailing later. And then I also found this picture of the classic Victorian carolers, and it's just fun. We need a lot more music. We absolutely do. And we need original pagan Yule music and songs that we can learn, we can sing to, that we can play year after year, enjoy year after year. But we can also make use of the more secular seasonal music. I mean, for instance, jingle bells. Jingle bells is not particular to any religion or to anybody. I mean, even when I was raised by my Jehovah's Witness parents, I wasn't allowed to sing any Christmas music, but I could sing jingle bells. Jingle bells was okay because that wasn't really Christmassy. Whatever, mom and dad, whatever you got to tell yourself to sleep better at night. But it's fun. It's fun to partake in these things. And of course, a lot of people who were raised in the more Christian tradition, they do have good memories about the Christmas carols, and they feel very sentimental, at least about the music. And there's been plenty of people in books and in blogs that have presented alternate pagan lyrics that go along with the music, and that's something we can make use of. I think as time goes on, we'll start veering away from that, but we've got to give ourselves time to come up with our own traditions. And that's why if you discover a pagan artist that has music or song that's you just feels really appropriate for this time of year, and you love listening to it, just be sure to incorporate it, not just during your ritual, but maybe you play these things while you're decorating. Maybe you start learning the lyrics yourself, maybe your kids start learning the lyrics, and this is something that you kind of do as you go about your business of decorating, or you're baking, or you're doing this or that, and it just becomes part of the landscape. And then of course over time these things get handed down, and the next thing you know, we have our own traditional Yule musics. Now, this is a couple generations down the line, but you have to plant the seeds sometimes, and we might as well do that. And the important thing is that we carry on with it. So now for the 12 nights of Yule, we know that, the Yuletide, it wasn't always necessarily 12 nights. This is just one of those processes that came about through the historical progression of time. But it's commonplace now, and of course we have all kinds of discussions about when exactly should Yule be celebrated, and this and this and that. However, it is kind of nice to go from December 20th, just before the solstice, and then to December 31st, because it's a common thing in our overarching culture for this to be a time of celebration. It does also cover the solstice itself, which if you are more focused on the solstice, that is extraordinarily important. And it makes sense. People are more likely to be off work. If someone has a few leftover vacation days, this might be a good time to use them up, especially if your company doesn't pay you out for them. So it's kind of a use it or lose it situation. This is just a good time for it, and if people are more relaxed, and you might as well. And even if you're having to work pretty much all the way through, there are little things you can do that mark the occasions that still make this time feel really special. And I in my research for this, because I wanted to see what other people were doing, because I don't think that my ideas are the only ones that exist by any means. I came across this blog called Nordic Wiccan. I have the address down there. And of course, if you look in the description box, I have tons of resources in reference to not just blogs, but video channels. I mean, and all kinds of stuff that all has to do with Yule. But I was really struck because she actually created herself a calendar. She created a calendar where, she wanted to honor particular deities on these particular nights, wanted to focus on various ideas. Some people apparently also will go to the Nine Noble Virtues and incorporate those, and, and add in a few other ideas that they think are worthy of a pagan's attention to flesh it out to a nice 12 nights. Some people have gotten into the habit of lighting candles for each night. Um, and I've been ever since I finished decorating my house, I have been lighting candles every single day. Part of it is, bringing that little bit of light to the darkness, but there is also something very ritualized that feels about it. So I will be definitely continuing that through the whole rest of this month. But I like the idea of every day having a plan, even if it's just a very small thing. And I think this is a useful example that we can use it as, just a starting point for our own brainstormings, because we'll all be making adjustments that are appropriate for our own circumstances and our own family traditions as well. But the point is, make this a proper festival. Even if we can't have this whole time off of work or away from daily life, we can still make it special. And I think that always begins with having a plan. So here's my challenge to you. What is your ideal blending of Yule traditions that are spiritually meaningful to you and your own personal traditions and the traditions of your family? Because I do think we need to do a lot more blending. I think it makes life a lot more easier when we bring things together rather than trying to keep everything in these rigid little boxes. That just sounds stressful. But blending things together and it all flows together quite naturally, I think that's when it's just easier to just do the thing rather than obsess about how and the why to do the thing. So I'm going to be taking you through just kind of my plan. Some of this will be maybe applicable to other people. Some of this is, again, just very specific to me because, I can only know how I celebrate, how other people celebrate. Just think about this as inspiration or something, jumping off point. So December 20th, Mother's Night, that is commonly called. Observances begin at sundown. I think this is a good time to actually light the Yule log and or candles because you have that fire. Well, you do if you have the Yule log in a nice fireplace where it's safe. To light that log, to have that feed the fire all through the night until the daybreak, when you have that glorious moment of the rebirth of the sun. This is a good time to honor Frigga, who is the mother of Balder, but also Ethne, who is the mother of Lu, the biological mother of Lu. And as well as all mother goddesses, all female ancestors, anyone of this kind, anyone who has gone through that process of childbirth who is connected to you, either through blood or through spirituality. This is a good time to honor them because this is their of pain and the very hard task of actual laboring childbirth to bring new life into the world. That is something worth paying respects to. And because this night does symbolize a mother, particularly a goddess, being in labor to bring forth a child, this is a good opportunity to meditate on the virtue of industriousness because it is hard work. To bring new life in the world, and it's hard work to keep that life alive once it arrives. There's a reason why parents look stressed out and fearful. Especially once the kids get to toddling around, like, oh my God, everything they do, it's like they're trying to die. You have to be very vigilant. You have to be on top of things, and of course, there's just the work of bathing the child, feeding the child, making sure that all the child's needs are met. It's industriousness plays a lot into it, and then every single day of the Yuletide, looking forward to having it correspond with a particular month of the coming year. And of course, at the beginning, think forward to January and that time of purification to come. Because right now, we're not worried about purification. We're not worried about a whole lot of things that comes for January. January is for more of the austerity. So thinking to that and knowing that that's coming, that's also part of the process of letting go of this year and everything that has occurred within it and starting afresh in January. And then, because all pagan festivals are fairly food focused, I'm thinking for Mother's Night a nice hearty soup, some homemade bread, something that isn't too terribly complicated, but something that's very warm and nourishing. This might be a good opportunity for beef vegetable. Now, for December 21st, the solstice itself. And yes, the exact time of the solstice, it does vary from year to year. Just check your calendar and just accordingly, Karen. Now, because I'm 42, I don't think I'm going to be staying up the entire night to greet the dawn. I don't think that's very practical for me. Kudos to those who can. Good for you. But making a point to wake up early and being there to greet the dawn, see the dawn. I'm going to be honoring both Balder and Lu and making mention of solar deities generally, because this is their moment when they have reached the bottom, the lowest point of their strength, and now they just grow in strength from here forward, and that growing in strength is what will restore life eventually. And then I thought it might be fun to have a celebratory breakfast. We do a lot of dinners for our pagan celebrations, but I thought, on this occasion might be more appropriate to do a celebratory breakfast. I'm thinking, scrambled eggs, cubed ham, yellow bell pepper, yellow onion, orange juice. You see all of these solar associations, keeping it focused on that. And then maybe in the evening, having a bonfire if possible, or alternatively, lighting as many candles as possible to help encourage that return of the light, be part of that turning of the wheel. And then looking forward to February and the gradual thaw of the ice and those occasional few days of fool spring that we always seem to get every February that makes people think, oh, the worst of winter's behind us. No, it's not. No, it's not. But this is also, of course, the most appropriate day to tell a Yule story, read a Yule story, write a Yule story. I think that'd be a fun thing to do, and especially if you have kids, reading pagan books to them that explain these various occasions in a way that's appropriate for children. I think that's a beautiful thing to do, and this is also a good time to contemplate the virtue of hope, because this Sabbat, above all others, is about hope. It's the hope of we might be in the darkest point ever, but it won't last. It always goes forward. Then December 22nd, I thought that we could devote this to the spirit of winter, honoring figures such as the Caliac, Scotty, Jack Frost, other winter deities, because this is their time. I mean, yes, the sun has been reborn. It is going to start gaining in strength, but it's not there yet. This is still a very cold time of year. This is still a time where we have that magic of frost and ice and snow. We might as well enjoy that and because the earth is sleeping, I think it's a graceful thing to leave a small offering for the birds and other wildlife that have remained through the winter and who are relatively active, although they're definitely not as active as they are in summer and spring. But give them a little something, help keep them fat and happy through the winter. Then contemplate the virtue of courage. I think especially if someone has seasonal depression issues, uh, it can be an act of courage to make up your mind that you are going to endure it for another year, to make up your mind to try to figure out how you might thrive, or at the very least suffer less. And I think it does take courage to look for beauty in the thing that we might fear. That might sound a little bit odd, but the winter is just a natural process. The winter is not coming to attack us or to make us unhappy. It's just something that naturally takes place. So, looking for what it has to offer, I think that does take a little bit of courage to move beyond maybe our emotional overreaction to it and think, what can I get out of it? I think that also helps us just be in a much more uplifted state of mind. And then, of course, look forward to March, when there will definitely be greater daylight and we'll cross over the equinox. I tend to think of the light and the dark of the year more so being oriented around the equinoxes, because with the spring, now you finally have more daylight than you do nighttime. And then, of course, in the fall, then you have more dark than you do light. And that's just how I think of it. But, regardless of, how you would divide the year between light and dark yourself, it's inarguable that by the time we get to March, we are noticing those slightly longer days. And then plan for a cozy night in. Blankets, candles, cocoa, good book, good company, whatever you're going to do, just, you know, you've had your time. Hopefully you have stuck your head out the door to see what winter is doing, but then, allow yourself that comfort of coming back in and enjoying, the benefits of actually living in a technologically advanced society. Our ancestors would have been jealous of that. Now, for December 23rd, I thought it'd be good, particularly right before the flurry of Christmas Eve and Christmas, which a lot of pagans do still do with their families, and I think they should, because these are cultural occasions, not just Christian religious occasions. I think it's good to have a family night just for the household, where you're just focusing on your spouse, your children, if grandma and grandpa live with you, focusing on them as well. This can be a good time if when you're having dinner to offer a toast to your ancestors. Make sure you light the candles, because it's all about the candles and the light. You're going to see this every single day of the Yuletide. Then you can also make it a game night. preferably non-electronic games, because, and the reason for this is not, any prejudice against video games, but it's more about if you're playing cards or you're playing board games or charades or whatever else it is that you're doing, the family's actively interacting with each other. They're not looking at the screen, they are looking at each other, they are talking to each other, and they're getting the benefit of everyone's company. For meditation, contemplate the virtue of honor, and then look forward to April and the return of flowers. Now, sometimes in very late March, where I live in Missouri, we might get a few daffodils. We might get a few flowers here and there, but it isn't until April that you start seeing, other flowers like tulips and so on, begin to feel brave and begin to kind of stick up their heads above the soil and start to come back. And I think this is also for family night. It's a good idea to discuss the importance of hospitality, how to be a good host as well as a good guest. Because if you're hosting the family celebrations, it's good to get children involved and understanding that they're playing a role in that hosting, even though the adults are the ones responsible. They should also be making themselves very helpful. Hello, Aunt Georgina. Hello, Uncle Ted. Can I take your coat? Do you need anything to drink? Seeing to their comfort, teaching them how to do that. It's important. It helps them build up social skills. And since many of us in our generation are a bit socially awkward for a wide variety of reasons, some of which aren't entirely our fault, others which were entirely self-inflicted, it is good to break that habit, to, even if whether you're introverted or extroverted, if you just have some basic social skills, it really does make life a lot easier, a lot more pleasant, and that's a good thing to pass on to the children. And then if you're going to be going to, say grandma's house or an aunt or an uncle's for future festivities, talking to your children in advance about how to be a good guest, how to conduct yourself, how to behave. If you're sitting at a table and they have a seating plan, you sit where you're told to sit. You say please. You say thank you. May I? Pass this. Thank you for that. That is. That civilizes the children and makes them, more pleasant for the other family members to be around, which is an important thing. And it just gets them into this idea of you are required to act in a pleasing fashion, that you can't just go into a situation, even if they're relatives, and act the fool and just be nasty and hateful and ungrateful and all these things. That is not a good way to be, and teaching children that and enforcing that is a very important thing to do. We don't need any more uncivilized barbarians running around. Now, December 24th, Christmas Eve, feasting, community, gathering around with the relatives. Now, we always go to my Aunt Stacy's because she's my only non-Jehovah's Witness relative who I know at all. And she always has a Christmas Eve with her husband's family. And it's always baked ham, lots of delicious sides. We have some excellent cooks. There's tons of yummy desserts, lots of drinks. Sometimes if the weather's okay enough, we'll go out to the fire pit outside and just have this lovely blazing fire. We sing songs. There might be some drunken karaoke. In fact, there usually is, but there's a lot of other shared family traditions. We have a white elephant gift exchange. We have play different games. We do exchange gifts. It's a nice, fun time. Now, for us, we can honor, Santa and Mrs. Claus, and because I think they are composite figures, and it's by honoring them, it's a way of also honoring, all of the various deities who, their myths, their legends, their stories came together to fuel this idea of these benevolent gift givers who are looking for virtue in the world, looking for goodness, and wanting to reward that simply because it was good. We need a little bit more of that attitude. So whether you also want to extend that and honor various other deities, uh, or if you just want to, focus on the more generic, I think you can certainly render honor to an archetype, and and be show gratitude for everything that went into the creation of those archetypes. I think that's something you can do. Then contemplate the virtue of fidelity, particularly in the context of kith and kin. And fidelity might be something we generally think of in terms of having faithfulness towards one's marriage mate, but it can also be faithfulness towards one's family group, one's community, one's country, one's religion. There's a lot of different ways in which fidelity is actually quite relevant in life, and we have such an era of disloyalty, and not just disloyalty, but intentional, calculated, premeditated disloyalty. And I think fighting back on that and recognizing and rewarding and having people in our lives who are also more interested in finding people and things to be loyal to and sticking with that, I think that's something that we need to put out into the world. And then, of course, look forward to May and the Beltane fires. They will be here before we know it. Next, we have December 25th. Now, for my husband and I, Christmas Day is a very quiet day because we've already had kind of the rowdy celebration at my aunt's. We've wandered our way back home in the wee hours, and I do mean the wee hours. If we get out of my aunt's before 2 a.m., that's an early night. So we definitely like a more subdued and laid back Christmas Day in our household. You know, we do open presents, but then it's comfy pajamas, snacks. I'm burning candles. We're watching seasonal movies, and there's usually a nap time somewhere in there. But also, for my part, I like to honor deities that watch over matters of health and well-being. One good example of that is the goddess Air. This is a good idea, time to contemplate the virtue of self-discipline, just because everything that we do as pagans, and particularly for those of us who practice witchcraft, it is all about that self-discipline, about channeling your energies and telling yourself yes to some things, no to others, making choices and following through with those choices. And I think that's going to be an important thing, and especially in the coming year. I have a feeling that 2024 is going to be very interesting indeed. So having that sense of purpose and knowing that you have the willpower and the self-discipline to follow that purpose through, I think that will serve us well. Then look forward to next June when we celebrate the summer solstice. This is the polar opposite of what we just celebrated, because after that point, the dark begins to hold sway. And again, we don't necessarily feel the effects right away. The summer solstice, that is the beginning of the summer heat where I live, not the end by any means. But usually by the time we get to August, that's I start noticing that the darkness is starting to creep back. We are starting to feel some relief. I am starting to feel those more introverted cozy vibes. So it does happen. It's just very gradually, just like now with the return of the light. That is a very gradual process. And then, of course, build a snowman, weather permitting. I don't care how old you are. If you have snow that will stick together and you have enough of it, there is something that's just absolutely joyful about making a little snowman. Or, if you feeling frisky, just have a snowball fight. Whatever it is that you make it cooperate. Okay, went too far. Back. I swear. There we go. One more. There. And now the technology is obeying me. Very good. So, December 26th, in some circles, that is known as the Day of the Wren. And this is something that I thought I might be incorporating into my practice this year. The wren is a bird that represents the spirit of winter, and it symbolically dies at solstice. So, honoring the spirit feels like a natural thing to do. This comes from more of the British Isles. So, as that is related to my own ancestry, I thought, this is something I can incorporate. And this is also a day known as Boxing Day. We don't really have that in the United States, but throughout the rest of the Anglosphere, they do. And originally, Boxing Day and its idea was a reversal of social roles. And this custom dates all the way back to the Romans. So I think it's a fun day to be playful. And in that spirit, I thought, this would be a good day during the Yuletide to actually honor Loki and his family, light candles in their honor, and the idea of approaching life with a little bit of humor, a little bit of mischief, and you just having fun with it. I think it's a good day to contemplate the virtue of love, because I think there is a lot of humor in love, and it's not all serious in life and death. It is also about the lightness and the joy of life, the funny side of life, finding that with someone you care about. Lots to be said about that. And this would be a good day to look forward to July, when the land is busy gestating the crops to see us through to next winter, because July is also a pretty quiet time of year. I mean, there's lots going on, but nature's just kind of drumming along. It's found its rhythm. It's doing its thing. Everything is busy coming together through fruition, but it's not quite there yet. And that's kind of how this time of year feels. Only words even quieter, because it is the actual resting of the earth. Whereas in July, it's just the earth's lazy. The earth is pregnant. The earth is tired. The earth ain't doing nothing. It's more of that spirit. So it is another moment of that almost polar opposite of where we are in the year right now. Now, for the 27th of December, this is the night I've selected to pay special honor to the Wild Hunt, because the Wild Hunt, which did begin at Samhain, is very much at its peak at this time of year. It does last through to the winter until life rejuvenates. So, honoring Odin and all the deities associated with it, that's something I'm going to be doing. It's a day that I'm going to make a point to go on a bit of a hike or a walk, if as long as the weather is not horrendous, and just enjoy the stark beauty of the season. Look at the bare branches of the tree. Look at the evergreens, because they're the only thing that is green. If there's it's snow, if there's icicles, to admire. This is something that would just be kind of nice to do. There's a local nature park that I like to go to. It's called Cave Hollow. It has some really pretty rock formations, a lot of different interesting kind of trees. And so, if, weather permitting, that might be where I end up going. And, I won't be able to have a campfire there, but if you are someplace where you can have a little campfire and you can just enjoy nature and have a little bit of warmth, I think that'd be a fun thing to do and a way to make the day special. This is a day that I've selected to contemplate the virtue of truth and to look forward to the month of August, which will mark the beginning of the reaping. It's very strange to think so far into the future about, the cycle just continuing, but, we will get there just one step at a time. And then I thought for dinner, maybe homemade chicken pot pie, because by now, probably a lot of the leftovers from previous celebrations are, kind of getting low. And chicken pot pie, it takes a little bit of effort to make it, especially when you do it homemade. But you can make a lot of it. It can last you. And then, you have a few more days where you're not having to do as much effort to cook. And this is supposed to be a time of rest. So not pushing yourself to create a banquet every single day, I think, is pretty sensible. Then December 28th, I want to focus on the Fae and the Elves. Honoring the Alfar, the ancestors, and the Fae. So what I'll be doing is leaving an offering of mead or honey or both, depending on what I have on hand. And I'll be leaving this somewhere outside as a spirit of friendship, respect. I'll also be lighting candles in their honor. And I'll be contemplating the virtue of self-reliance. I think that is a virtue that our modern society has lost sight of to a very large extent, but we can reclaim that, and we're going to need to. And it's better to do that before it's absolutely necessary to do so, depending on just how unwieldy our civilization becomes. And there's so much confidence that comes from knowing that you can do something by yourself, or that if you can do, if you have the support of your spouse or your immediate family, that working together you can all make this happen. There's so much confidence that comes from that. It makes a lot of the scary things in the world a lot less frightening, because if worse comes to worse, you still have this, you still have something within your power. You can still take action to improve your situation, and that is a very comforting thought. Then look forward to September, when the harvest will be in full swing once again. And then once the harvest is, that'll be another reason to be very grateful to the Fae, because many of them are directly associated with the fertility and the life cycles of the land, as well as the elves, the land spirits, and of course the wisdom that we have inherited from our ancestors for the bounty that we will be creating. And this will be a day where I think I might, if I have any sweet treats left, just indulge in a small little one. Then December 29th, this will be a time to focus on hearth and home, at least for me in my practice. Focus on kindling the home fires, honor household goddesses such as Bridget, Frigga, Hestia, light plenty of candles for them. Bridget in particular, we know, is very strongly associated with fire. And, after Yule is over, we'll be heading towards a Mulk, and a Mulk is very Bridget-centric. And then I think maximizing coziness by making a shepherd's pie for dinner. And then just having kind of a low key day, simple crafts, knitting, sewing, listening to relaxing music, maybe get in touch with a friend or two, try to arrange a visit, things that are just very easy, very stress free. And then contemplate the virtue of perseverance. And then look forward to October, when nature has faded and the spirits have become restless again. Then on the 30th, I've chosen this as a day of remembrance to honor the Valkyries and Hemdall and all other deities who are associated with being guardians of civilization. And of course, a day to remember also fallen soldiers and everyone who fights to ensure the continuation of our society and its custom. Because that isn't just the military, it's also people who speak out about cultural issues, people who talk about our heritage. These are people who are essentially trying to fight not only for our existence, but also for our continued existence so that our posterity still has something, has their history, and has something meaningful. And then I thought that might be a good day to light candles for members of the family who are in the military, as well as, those domestic warriors at home who, again, fight for our culture, just show a little bit of respect for them. And then to contemplate the virtue of protectiveness, because if no one feels protective of anything, then nothing is ever defended. And if nothing is defended, then nothing lasts. So being protective in the appropriate way at the appropriate times is an absolute necessity. And then look forward to November when we will be prioritizing thankfulness. And the idea of remembrance and thankfulness that's very strongly linked in my mind is because uh, sometimes I think we forget just how much of our world just, didn't just spring into being. There's a lot of hard work that went into it. People will never know who made considerable contributions that just led to us having a certain amount of ease in our day to day life that enable us to pursue things that are beyond just bare minimum existence. There's a lot to be thankful for. And then I think I will also attempt to figure out Grandpa Jerry's fudge recipe. It's a bit temperamental. It has led many people in tears when they have attempted it, but I think I will absolutely make the effort to do that this year. I think that'd be fun. It's something that is very special for my father's side of the family. Anytime his fudge batch came out really well, people really looked forward to that. So I want to master this art and get it figured out. Then December 31st, New Year's Eve, and it is time for the wassailing, specifically the wassailing of the trees. I'm going to try to find some apple trees if possible. If not, I will find, a tree that I like. This is the reason why the apple trees is in order to pay homage to Idan, because in mythology, she's the keeper of the apples that keep all the gods youthful and strong, and also a time to pay homage to her husband Bragi, this god of poetry and song, because this has also been uh, a celebration in which his great talents are something that can be drawn upon. And because it was once customary for people to swear oaths on the hog's head at this time of year, I'm thinking about preparing something pork for dinner, um, even if it's just, something involving bacon, close enough. And then, while I'm eating that, swearing goals for the coming of the year, this is the making of the resolutions. If we make it in a more ritualized way, we might be uh, a little bit more mindful about fulfilling those resolutions, not just making them and forgetting them. And then at this very last day of the Yuletide, looking forward to next December and, what a person hopes to achieve in the coming year. And that'll be different for each one of us. But, really thinking about that and trying to visualize and saying, okay, what do I do to make this happen? And of course, must follow the tradition of staying up until midnight and saying hello to 2024. And that is my basic overarching plan for Yuletide. And I hope it puts you in mind about how you can, in your own personal practice, do things that are meaningful to you, things that are consistent with your family traditions and your spiritual practice, and to just bring it all together in a way that's manageable for you to do. So before I leave you, because this has been rather a long string, a few final thoughts. In case this sounds like a bit much, I want to reassure everyone that all things are possible with planning. And what you do to first get into things might be extremely simple than what someone who's already has habits that are formed and things just kind of happen by reflex. You already know what you're doing on particular days because you've been doing these things, for 10 or 20 years. If this is your first year, you don't put so much pressure on yourself. Don't expect things to look and feel and be exactly like they would be, when you are further along down your path. But just make small little plans. Do small little things that are absolutely within your power. Things that don't necessarily cost you much money or any money. Just be very practical. Plan it out. Have a plan. And then when the time comes, just put that plan into action. It'll be so much simpler than if you just wing it, I promise. And then on a similar vein, Having a full-blown Yuletide and making it a very special occasion and a meaningful occasion to you, this does not have to be overwhelming. Simplicity is a virtue as well. It may not be one that I selected to contemplate through a Yuletide, but simplicity is a virtue. Things do not have to be complicated or difficult to have value. And of course, do what is within your means. Do not feel pressured to do what is outside of your means. And and especially when it comes, things like decorations or gifts, don't feel like you have to get everything new all the time. Don't feel like every year has to be an entirely different year. Don't feel like things have to be extravagant. Try your best to ignore those pressures and think about the motivations of the people who try to promote that. What is it that they're trying to do? And do they actually have your best interest at heart? And are they considering about your spiritual values? Is their advice really consistent with your spiritual worldview? Something to think about. Just kind of give yourself a little bit of mental and emotional insulation so that you don't find yourself getting pushed around by people who are trying to get you to spend more than you should, or do things that maybe you don't really care about. Spend your time wisely as well. It isn't just your money that's a valuable resource, it's your time as well. Make sure you spend your time well. And then remember that the spiritual meaning is what matters most. That's the true value of this occasion. I mean, we love the window dressing. I mean, I think it would be a very rare person who actually doesn't like the window dressing of all of this, but it's a spiritual meaning. And you don't have to, especially when money is a pretty serious concern. It doesn't cost any money to learn to sing a song. You can do that. If you have access to the internet and you're watching this right now, you have access to, lyrics for music that you can make into, Yule songs, the originally Christmas songs, but you can make them Yule songs, or, original works that other pagan artists have already put out. You can learn those songs. You can learn to sing them. You can learn to incorporate them into your ritual. That does not cost you money to do. And also remember that, our ancestors, compared to our standard of living, our lifestyle, the luxuries that we have, they would not have recognized it. They were making do on far less, and they did things that mattered to them, that were a good time, that were fun, and they enjoyed it, and it fed their souls. And it didn't involve, the parting with many gold pieces. So that's something to keep in mind as well. What would and I think that's one of the good things that can come out of doing a lot of extensive research about past customs, as you can see just how much our ancestors were able to do with really very little. So if you are enduring particular financial struggles, use that as inspiration. And I mean, don't let anyone denigrate you for doing something simple or something that doesn't necessarily require the expenditure of funds. Don't you know to, get people like that out of your life. To be honest with you, they're just nasty. And then when it comes with dealing with non-pagan relatives or non-pagan friends or non-pagan coworkers or just non-pagans generally, graciousness reveals good character and promotes goodwill. There are some people who get very obnoxious, who insist that if their spiritual customs are not being observed, Christians, that it doesn't count, or that people are LARPing, or if they've lost sight of things and all this and that. And people can get very overbearing. Just try to keep in mind that a lot of people of the Christian faith feel very attacked, because if you look at various political movements, they are pretty anti-Christian values. And let's keep in mind that the Christianity we know today has been tempered by a lot of pagan philosophy. And that has really, well, it helped the religion mind its manners to begin with. And because there was this scrambling of the egg, it means that, we do have kind of this shared cultural, um, oh, Oh, I lost my word. But we have something shared culturally, even though, we do have different interpretations. We're putting up our trees for different reason. We're lighting candles for different reasons. We're getting together and celebrating, the birth of something for very different reasons, because there are very different things being born in our spiritual worldviews. But nonetheless, a lot of the outward trappings, we do have those things in common. And so, those things, they do mean a particular thing to them. It is sacred to them for very specific reasons that are different from our own. And yes, it can be kind of irritating to have to be the bigger person. Like, that's nice. That's nice, Aunt Gertrude. That's nice. I'm happy you have Jesus in your heart. That is absolutely fantastic. Goody for you. That can be a bit overbearing, but try try to keep in mind the spirit of Yuletide. It isn't about, trying to convince people to adopt our own point of views or trying to, overly impose our own views on someone else. Just think about, company, family, how we don't have our relatives for forever. Our species is mortal, even though we do have some annoying people in our family sometimes, they are still our family. They are still tied to us through blood and marriage and history. And the day will come when they're not there. And when that day comes, we will miss them. And we will, rather if hear them nagging or rambling on about something that like okie dokie, don't really care, but that's fine. We will miss that just because they're not there to do that. We have, what they brought to the family is something that they lost. So try to look for their good points. Try not to let to get any overwhelming, non-pagan spiritual messages to get you down. Just try to keep your center. Remember that you love them, and also remember, keep in mind that this is not necessarily the occasion to make a point. There can be other times when it would be more appropriate to say, this I have these beliefs, and I understand you have yours, but do we have to have this tug of war about them? Can we just come together over things we do have in common? That's a conversation that you can probably have after the season when they might be a little bit more open to it, because right now they have a lot of buildup of energy. And by, when they keep saying, oh, Jesus is the reason for the season and all this and that, for one, they're being honest. It's the reason for their season. But also, I think they say that as a refrain, almost as an act of self-defense. So even though that does get a bit tedious for us to listen to, just try to be kind. Just try to be kind. That kindness will eventually yield very good fruit. So that is what I have for you. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it very much. Um, uh, oh, oh my goodness. I have my presentation screen, so I didn't see Ro fan. So Ro, but the fact that you were here. I hope you have a good brunch with your husband. Um, but now I know that the YouTube comments will not automatically pop up when I have things on full screen on my end. So I will bear that in mind for the future. But thank you for joining me, Ro. Thank you, everyone who's been watching on Rumble. Really appreciate it. Much love to you all. And let me know in the comments what are your plans, or send me an email if you want to kind of brainstorm with someone, or if you are wanting to have a more involved conversation about what you might be able to do to tailor your own celebrations, and you just want to bounce some ideas off of me, please feel free. I mean, I do provide my email for that particular reason, just so that people do have a resource still if they want to. But anyway, I'm going to let you go. Have a great day. Hope to hear from you soon, and blessed Yuletide.